He called me an unnecessary expense and let AI software replace me. 48 hours later, the company's entire logistics system ground to a halt. 72 hours after that, 29 of my partners sent termination notices. I never threatened them. I simply disappeared and let them optimize in panic. My name is Marlene Sanders. For over 15 years, I've been the beating heart of Novacor Supply's logistics division, orchestrating the movement of frozen food across 48 states with the precision of a symphony conductor. I didn't start out thinking I'd make a career in supply chain management. Who does? But there's an art to it that most people never see: a complex dance of relationships, timing, and trust that no algorithm could ever fully grasp. At least, that's what I thought until Austin Griggs arrived. Austin swaggered into our Minneapolis headquarters last winter, all designer suits and Silicon Valley buzzwords. At 34, he was the youngest CEO in company history, brought in by our board to disrupt our traditional paradigms and leverage digital transformation for competitive advantage. What that actually meant, as we soon discovered, was slashing costs and implementing half-baked tech solutions without understanding our business. I still remember the first all-hands meeting after his arrival. The conference room smelled of fresh paint. Austin had insisted on repainting everything in the corporate office, a sterile white with Novacor's blue logo emblazoned on every possible surface. We sat in uncomfortable new chairs while he paced before us, wireless mic clipped to his lapel like he was giving a TED Talk. "The future of logistics isn't in relationships," he announced, his voice echoing through our newly installed sound system. "It's in algorithms. Data-driven pivoting will replace gut instinct. Machine learning will optimize what human bias cannot." I exchanged glances with Rico from accounting, who rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of his head. Austin didn't notice. He was too busy introducing his new right-hand man, Troy Matheson, a 30-something MBA with slicked-back hair and the smug expression of someone who's never actually had to tell a truck driver why his route changed at the last minute. "Troy will be spearheading our operational excellence initiative," Austin continued. His background in business analytics at Price Lumen Consulting brings exactly the fresh perspective we need. What Austin didn't say, but what became painfully obvious in the following weeks, was that Troy's fresh perspective primarily involved feeding our operational data into a proprietary AI system called Opticore that would supposedly revolutionize our supply chain management. I watched from my corner office as they installed new servers, ran fiber optic cables, and held closed-door meetings with tech consultants who never once spoke to the people actually doing the work. I tried to be cooperative. Really, I did. When Troy's team requested access to my client databases, I provided them. When they asked for detailed notes on our routing procedures, I spent 3 weekends compiling 15 years of institutional knowledge into neat spreadsheets. I even sat through a 4-hour demonstration of Opticore's interface, nodding politely as the developer explained how it would optimize routing in ways my limited human processing capabilities never could. "The algorithm can process thousands of variables simultaneously," the developer explained, not noticing how I winced at the word algorithm. "Weather patterns, traffic data, fuel costs, warehouse capacity, all optimized in real time." "What about Ralph's back problems?" I asked. The developer blinked. "Excuse me. Ralph Tennyson, one of our drivers in the Midwest region. He has chronic back pain from an old football injury. We always make sure his routes have stops every 2 hours so he can stretch. The algorithm accounts for that." "Right?" Troy jumped in before the developer could answer. "Marlene, that's exactly the kind of inefficiency we're trying to eliminate. No offense, but this personalized approach is what's holding Novacor back from true optimization." No offense, as if 15 years of building relationships, solving problems, and keeping our operation running smoothly was just an unfortunate habit I needed to break. I might have let it go if it had just been about Ralph, but it wasn't. It was about Diane at the Minneapolis distribution center, who needed specific loading times because she was a single mom. It was about the warehouse in Des Moines that had an unofficial but sacred smoke break at exactly 10:47 a.m. every day. It was about knowing that Jorge in shipping would only sign for deliveries if you complimented his dog first, a labradoodle named Einstein that he showed pictures of to anyone who would look. These weren't inefficiencies. They were the human elements that made our system work. The oil in the machine, the trust that kept everything moving smoothly when paperwork failed or systems crashed. But Austin and Troy didn't see it that way. To them, I was just another variable in their optimization equation, and apparently, I was a variable they decided they could do without. The summons came on a Tuesday afternoon, an email from HR asking me to come to Conference Room C at 4:30 p.m. Conference Room C was the smallest meeting room in the building, tucked away in a corner with no windows and uncomfortable chairs. Everyone knew it was where they took people to be fired. I spent the rest of the afternoon backing up personal files, clearing my desk of family photos, and making copies of my contact list. Not the official one in our CRM system, my real contact list, with personal cell numbers and notes about birthdays, family members, and which suppliers needed special handling. I saved it all onto my personal cloud drive and deleted the copies from my work computer. Then I walked to Conference Room C with my head held high. They were waiting for me, Austin, Troy, and Meredith from HR, whose expression of practiced empathy couldn't quite hide her discomfort. Austin sat at the head of the table, already looking past this unpleasant task to whatever disruptive initiative was next on his agenda. "Marlene, thank you for coming," he began, as if I'd had a choice. "As you know, NovaCore is undergoing significant structural changes to position ourselves for future growth." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak yet. "After careful analysis of our operational workflows, we've identified several redundancies that can be addressed through our new OptiCore system." He glanced at Troy, who nodded encouragingly. "This isn't a reflection on your performance, which has always been exemplary. It's simply that technology has advanced to the point where many of the manual processes you oversee can now be automated for greater efficiency." Translation: You're being replaced by software. Meredith slid a folder across the table. "We've prepared a comprehensive separation package that includes 8 weeks of severance pay, continuation of benefits through the end of the quarter, and career transition services." I looked at the folder but didn't touch it. "When your position will be phased out effective immediately," Troy said, his voice carrying a note of what he probably thought was kindness. "But we'd like you to assist with knowledge transfer for the next 3 days to ensure a smooth transition." 3 days, 15 years of service, and they were giving me 3 days to hand over everything I knew. Austin pushed a USB drive toward me. "If you could download your notes, contact information, and any relevant operational procedures onto this, our team will integrate it into OptiCore's learning algorithm." I picked up the USB drive, turning it over in my hand. It was branded with NovaCore's logo and the tagline, "Delivering tomorrow, today." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Of course," I said, my voice steady. "I'd be happy to help with the transition." Austin looked relieved. He'd clearly expected tears, or anger, or pleading. "That's very professional of you. Marlene, I knew we could count on you to understand the bigger picture." "Absolutely," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "Change is inevitable in business. I'll have everything prepared by Friday." Troy looked surprised at my acquiescence. "That's great. I've scheduled some time tomorrow morning to go over the critical client relationships." I smiled. "I look forward to it." That night, I went home to my apartment overlooking the Mississippi River and opened a bottle of Pinot Noir I'd been saving for a special occasion. This certainly qualified. I sat on my balcony watching the river flow past, dark and powerful, carrying everything in its path downstream. I thought about NovaCore, about Austin and Troy and their precious algorithm. I thought about the 29 suppliers I'd cultivated relationships with over the years, some of whom had become genuine friends. I thought about the drivers and warehouse managers and shipping clerks whose lives and quirks I'd learned to navigate. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to sabotage Novacor, nothing so crude or legally problematic. I was simply going to step aside and let their algorithm do exactly what they thought it could do, run the entire logistics operation without me. I opened my laptop and began writing 29 separate personalized messages. Not emails, those could be tracked on company servers. Text messages to personal phones, sent from my personal number that wouldn't appear in any company records. To Rico at Midwest Frozen Foods. Changes coming at Novacor. I'm moving on. Hold any new shipments for a few days until things settle. To Trina at Fresh Freeze Distribution. Hey T, it's Marlene. I've been let go. They're implementing an AI system to replace me. Might want to wait and see how it goes before sending your next shipment. To Hassan at Pinnacle Cold Storage. Major changes here. I'm out as of Friday. New system taking over. Suggest holding off on deliveries until you see how it works. One by one. I contacted every supplier in my network with a similar message, not asking them to cut ties with Novacor, not explicitly encouraging them to withdraw their business, nothing that could be construed as interference with contracts. Just a heads up from a trusted colleague that things were changing. The responses came quickly. Rico, if you're gone, I'm gone too. Let me know where you land. Trina, are they insane? You are the supply chain. What's your next move? Hassan didn't text back. He called immediately. What happened? He demanded when I answered. I explained the situation, the new CEO, the algorithm, the optimization. Hassan's laugh was bitter. Optimization, right. These tech bros think everything can be reduced to ones and zeros. He paused. What are you going to do? I'm considering my options, I said carefully. Well, consider this wherever you go. Pinnacle goes too. My father didn't build this business by trusting computers over people. By midnight, I'd heard back from 23 of my 29 contacts. The consensus was clear they were with me, not Novacor, but I didn't ask them to do anything yet. I just thanked them for their support and told them I'd be in touch. The next morning, I went to work as usual, dressed in my best navy suit. I sat through Troy's meeting, nodding and taking notes as he explained how OptiCore would revolutionize our supply chain. I agreed to compile detailed notes on all our major suppliers and promised to have everything ready by Friday. Then I went back to my office, closed the door, and spent the day creating the most useless transition documents imaginable for supplier contacts. I listed generic company phone numbers that would route to automated phone trees. For special handling instructions, I wrote vague, technically accurate, but practically useless notes like delivery timing subject to warehouse availability and payment terms negotiable based on volume. I created a map of our distribution network that looked impressive but subtly mislabeled several key locations, nothing that would cause immediate catastrophe, just enough to create confusion when discrepancies arose. Where specific knowledge was critical, I simply omitted it entirely, knowing that Troy and his team wouldn't know enough to ask for what was missing. And for the USB drive Austin had given me, I filled it with plausible-looking spreadsheets that were actually nonsensical, a few outdated procedural documents from 5 years ago, and just because I couldn't resist a folder labeled Critical Client Info that contained nothing but a meme of Danny DeVito giving the middle finger. It was childish, I'll admit, but it felt good. Wednesday and Thursday passed in a blur of fake compliance. I attended transition meetings, answered questions with technically accurate but practically useless information, and watched as Troy confidently assured Austin that OptiCore would be fully operational by Monday. The beauty of machine learning, Troy explained in our final meeting, is that it will optimize processes we didn't even know needed optimization. It will find efficiencies humans can't even see. I nodded and smiled. I'm sure it will. Friday morning, I cleared out my office, turned in my keycard, and walked out of Novacor Supply for the last time. No farewell party, no card signed by colleagues, no acknowledgement of 15 years of service beyond a form email from HR confirming my separation package. As I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of anger, relief, and anticipation. The anger would fade. I knew. The relief might linger, but it was the anticipation that kept a small smile on my face, because I knew what was coming. The first signs of trouble appeared around 10:30 Monday morning, when my phone lit up with a text from Jenny, an administrative assistant at Novacor who'd always been kind to me. "Complete chaos here," she wrote. "Opticor sent 3 trucks to the wrong warehouse. Troy is freaking out." I didn't respond, but I did pour myself another cup of coffee and settle onto my balcony to enjoy the spring morning. By noon, the texts were coming steadily from various former colleagues. "System showing we have inventory that doesn't exist. Drivers calling in confused about routes. Troy locked himself in your old office. We can hear him shouting on the phone." I felt a twinge of sympathy for the frontline workers caught in the mess, but I reminded myself this wasn't my creation. Austin and Troy had been so confident in their algorithm, so dismissive of human expertise. Now they were learning what that really meant. The real breakdown began Tuesday morning. According to my sources inside Novacor, the problems that had seemed manageable on Monday had cascaded overnight. Shipments had failed to arrive at critical destinations. Orders were duplicated or lost entirely. Drivers were given impossible routes that zigzagged across states with no logical pattern. And the suppliers. My suppliers were starting to react. Rico called me around 11 a.m. "Your former company is a disaster," he said without preamble. "They sent a truck to our loading dock at 3 a.m. No one was there to receive it. The driver had to sleep in his cab until morning shift arrived." "That's unfortunate," I said neutrally. "Yeah, well, it gets better. When my guys finally unloaded the truck, half the manifest was wrong. They're trying to deliver products we never ordered while missing the stuff we actually need." He paused. "I tried calling your replacement, got routed to some automated system that had me talking to a robot for 20 minutes before disconnecting. I made a sympathetic noise but offered no solutions. Anyway," Rico continued, "I've put a hold on all shipments to Novacor until they sort themselves out, which brings me to my next question. Where are you landing?" "Marlene. Because wherever it is, I want Midwest Frozen Foods to be your first client." I smiled. "I'm still weighing my options, Rico, but I'll keep you posted." Similar conversations followed throughout the day. Trina reported that Fresh Freeze had received an automated email from Opticor adjusting their payment terms without negotiation or warning. Hassan said that 3 different Novacor representatives had contacted him with conflicting instructions about an upcoming delivery. One by one, my network of suppliers was discovering what Novacor was like without me as the intermediary, and one by one, they were backing away. By Wednesday, my 5th day of unemployment, Novacor was in full crisis mode. Jenny reported that Austin had called an emergency meeting of all department heads, during which he'd pounded the table and demanded to know how things had fallen apart so quickly. Troy kept saying it was just initial calibration issues with Opticor, she texted. But then shipping pulled up the numbers. "We've lost contact with 11 delivery trucks." Lost contact? Like, no one knows where they are. One of them was carrying specialty insulin for 3 hospitals in North Dakota. That made me sit up straighter. I'd never want patient care to be compromised. I quickly texted back, "The insulin truck is probably at the Flying J truck stop off I-94. Eddie Lampert always stops there on North Dakota routes." Jenny: "How do you know that?" "Me, Eddie's wife, has family in Fargo. He always arranges his schedule to have dinner with them when he's passing through." 20 minutes later, Jenny confirmed, "You were right. They found Eddie. Troy wants to know if you'll come in as a consultant to help sort this mess out." I didn't respond to that message. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Vivian Chen, the VP of Operations at Sapphire Logistics, Novacor's largest competitor. We'd met at industry conferences over the years, and she'd made no secret of her interest in poaching me. "Vivian," I wrote, "I'm available for new opportunities as of last week. Novacor decided my role could be better filled by an AI system. If Sapphire is still interested in my expertise and client relationships, I'd be open to a conversation." Her response came within 15 minutes. "Name your price. My calendar is clear tomorrow." The meeting with Vivian went exactly as I'd hoped. Sapphire Logistics wasn't just interested in my individual expertise. They were excited about the possibility of acquiring my network of suppliers and clients. We've been wanting to expand into Novacore's market for years, Vivian explained as we sat in Sapphire's sleek conference room. But their client relationships were too strong. Your relationships. I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. Those relationships are built on trust and personal connection, things that don't show up in data points. And now Novacore has thrown that advantage away, Vivian said, shaking her head in disbelief. Their loss, our gain. She slid a folder across the table, a real one, not digital. We're prepared to offer you the position of Director of Supplier Relations, full benefits, salary 30% above what Novacore was paying you, and a signing bonus if you can bring at least 15 of your former suppliers with you within the first quarter. I glanced at the offer. The numbers were even better than I'd anticipated. I think I can manage that. By Friday afternoon, 1 week after my departure from Novacore, I had signed my contract with Sapphire and begun reaching out to my network of suppliers. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Rico committed Midwest Frozen Foods to an exclusive contract with Sapphire before I'd even finished my pitch. Trina needed a little more convincing, but after I outlined Sapphire's more personalized approach to logistics management, she was on board too. Hassan took the longest, insisting on a video call with both me and Vivian before agreeing to shift Pinnacle's business. I want to be sure this isn't just another corporate machine, he explained. When Vivian outlined Sapphire's commitment to human expertise alongside technological tools, not replacing one with the other, he finally nodded in satisfaction. That's what I needed to hear. Meanwhile, Novacore was imploding. Jenny's updates became increasingly dire. Opticore had failed to account for a major snowstorm in the Midwest, sending trucks down roads that were closed. A specialty seafood shipment had been left on a loading dock in Arizona for 6 hours in 95-degree heat. 3 major hospital systems had switched to emergency suppliers after critical medical deliveries failed to arrive. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Opticore had taken over Novacore's logistics operations, Austin Griggs finally swallowed his pride and called me directly. "Marlene," he said when I answered, his voice tight with forced politeness. "I hope you're doing well." "I am, thank you," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "How can I help you?" "Austin." He cleared his throat. "We seem to be experiencing some transitional challenges with the new system. Troy thought perhaps there was some information that didn't make it into the knowledge transfer." I could almost picture him in his sleek office, probably pacing, his designer suit now rumpled after too many emergency meetings. "I provided all the information requested," I said truthfully. "It wasn't my fault they hadn't known what to request." "Yes, well," he paused, clearly struggling with what he needed to say next. "The board has authorized me to offer you a consulting position to help us stabilize the situation. Very generous compensation, of course." "That's very kind," I said. "But I've actually accepted a position with Sapphire Logistics. I start today." In fact, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Austin finally spoke, his voice had lost its corporate smoothness. "Sapphire, our direct competitor, Marlene, you can't—" "I can and I have," I interrupted calmly. "There's no non-compete clause in my separation agreement. I checked very carefully." Another long pause. "I see." His voice had gone cold. "And I suppose it's just coincidence that several of our suppliers have suddenly become difficult to work with." "I haven't asked anyone to leave Novacore," I said, which was technically true. "But relationships matter in this business. Austin, that was what I tried to tell you from the beginning." He didn't have a response to that. "If there's nothing else," I continued, "I need to get ready for my first day at my new position. Good luck with Opticore. I'm sure with enough time and resources, you'll get it sorted out." I hung up before he could reply. My first day at Sapphire was everything my last days at Novacore hadn't been: welcoming, respectful, and focused on the value of human expertise. Vivian introduced me to the team as the Wizard of Logistics and made it clear that my role would involve both maintaining key client relationships and helping to shape Sapphire's approach to technology integration. We believe in augmenting human judgment, not replacing it, she explained during the morning meeting. Marlene's experience is exactly what we need to ensure we don't lose sight of that principle. By the end of the day, I had my own office with a window, a competent assistant, and the first draft of a strategy for transitioning my former suppliers to Sapphire systems, not with an algorithm, but with careful planning, personal outreach, and respect for the human elements that made each relationship unique. Over the next 2 weeks, the exodus from NovaCore to Sapphire accelerated. It wasn't just my 29 direct contacts, it was their contacts, and their contacts' contacts, a cascading effect that rippled through the frozen food distribution network. Companies that had worked with NovaCore for decades were jumping ship, citing chaos, confusion, and a complete breakdown of the personalized service they'd come to expect. The industry took notice. Food Logistics magazine published an article titled, "AI Implementation Gone Wrong, the NovaCore Cautionary Tale," featuring interviews with several suppliers who had switched to Sapphire. None of them mentioned me by name.